The best way to understand how humans struggle with physical fitness from very young age until very old age, the best source of information is looking at your own child. If you look at your own child, you can realize quickly that nature has very fundamental laws that cannot be breached. Everything in fitness, in wellness, in health depends on mobility, growth, and development. Whether the person is a growing child or an aged person. A lot of people sit in wheeling chairs just because they have no knowledge. They don't know how to exercise. They don't know how to perform very basic functions on daily basis, especially when you get to the habit of getting into smoking, drinking, or having a sedentary job. You forget the very basics of nature. A lot of people that have crippling handicaps can avoid or can overcome the handicap by looking at how nature works. Let us see how this little child, her name is Farida, is developing. At very early age, this is a picture taken when she was very young. Her head is too heavy. If you look at her shoulders don't have enough muscles to move her head. So what is she going to do? She is going to use the biggest muscles of the body, which are the pelvic muscles, in order to get out of that. How is she going to stand or to turn? Look at the next move. The next move, her head is too heavy. She does not have any shoulder muscles or upper back muscles to lift that heavy head from the bed. So nobody told her how to do what she's doing now. She's using her pelvic lower spinal muscles and the gluteal muscles in order to be able to lift her body. All she can lift now is her lower body. If she does that, she can do a pull instead of push. A pull means if the pelvis goes up, she can use the spinal column to move her head or to turn her head around. Her neck, as you can tell now, the weakest point in her body now is the neck. The neck is very slim. There is not enough muscle to lift the skull from that location. That is a human being has a very huge brain, and the skull is too big because that is a very complicated machinery. The humans are more sophisticated than all animals. And that skull, that brain, that is the human civilization. That is how many millions of years we took to grow to become so complicated organisms. Still, nobody told her how to do that. Now, as you can tell now, her neck is a little bit stronger. That is few months later. She can hold her neck horizontally, but she still have to use the pelvis, the gluteal muscles, because she does not have upper chest muscles or upper spinal muscles. So if you look at her now, her foot is extended. Extended means she's pulling the calf muscles. She's trying to strengthen her lower limbs. Her arms are very weak, but she can hold herself on her arms. The most important part now is how she is going to develop the lower legs and the spinal column. The spinal column is what is going to lift her head up vertically. What is she working on now? She is working on the pressure points that are the basinian corpuscles at the soles of the foot. Those are going to send to the brain how much pressure are on the feet. She is training the stretch spindles or the muscle stretch reflexes or the muscle stretch sensors to educate the muscles on how to stretch, how to contract and relax. Why would you have to do that? The muscles have to learn how much you stretch and how much you contract. Well, how about when should you give up? You give up by what you call it Golgi or Golgi organ. Those are the sensors in the tendons that determines how far the tendons can be stretched. If the tendons is overstretched, the Golgi organs or the sensors of the stretch will send signals, fire electrical signals, to shut off the muscles so the person can collapse before the person can tear or rupture the ligaments or the muscles. So what is she doing now? She is training the pressure sensors at the feet. She is training the light touch sensors at the feet. She is training the nerve endings of the pain and sensation and the touch on the feet and the hands. If you look carefully at her eyes and her ears, she kept her ears horizontal with the ground. That is the equilibrium apparatus or the vestibular equilibrium of the brain. You have right and left vestibular apparatus that can keep the body horizontal. Each one of these apparatus is about small circle of a tube filled of fluid, three of them perpendicular in each other, like a three-dimensional water balance device in each ear. That equilibrium balance, if you look at her face, she is working in her head on how to balance herself in the three dimensions of the space. She looks down, that is one dimension. From one ear to another ear, that is the second dimension. The relationship between her foot and the head, that is the third dimension. So if you draw the three vectors in the space, you have a horizontal dimension, that's from the foot to the head. You have another horizontal dimension, vector, from one ear to another ear. You have a third vector from her eyes to the back of her neck. So she is doing the balance through the ears, through the eyes, through the light touch sensors, through the deep touch sensors, through the pressure sensors, through the muscle stretch reflex, and through the tendon reflex. And nobody told her what to do that. That is genetics. Now here you can tell she is very confident. The neck is so strong now, she can lift the head up above her body level, which tells you the back muscles of the neck are working. If you look at the spinal column from the neck to the buttocks, the column is very good because she is not collapsing badly in the middle of the trunk. And if you look at the stretch at her feet, she is stretching the foot very good. She is using the calf muscles and she is lifting the heels from the ground. So now the stretch reflexes the stretch tendons of the muscles of the hamstrings and the calf muscles are working because she was able to keep her knee from collapsing. Also the thigh muscles are working because the knees are not collapsing to the ground. If you look at the other foot on the other side of her body, the left foot and the right, they are separated from each other. That is the smartest thing that the genetics will do to you. Nobody told her how to spread her legs, her feet away from each other, because you need a wide base in order to be able to put the center of gravity on a wide base. If she keeps the 2 feet close to each other, she will fall. But how did she learn how to do that? Well, that is genetics. If you look at her hands, she needs her hands to be close because the hands are very weak. If you look at her girdle, which is the distance from one shoulder to another, that is a very small distance, very weak part. That's why she's keeping her hands close to each other. If she spread her hands, her face will collapse to the ground. But she can spread her feet because her pelvis is stronger. And if you look at her ears, how did she balance the ear right and left horizontally? Is because of the equilibrium apparatus. Where is she looking? She is looking to be able to change one of the vectors. She have to deal with three vectors. The vertical vector from the ceiling to the ground, she is using her eyes to adjust on that vector. The horizontal vector from the feet to the head, she is using the sensors of the feet and the back of the spine and the hands to figure out what is low and what is high compared to what is in the direction of the head, which you call it the cavillad, or against the cerebellum, and what is in the direction of the feet. The last vector is the horizontal from one ear to another. She is balancing herself. Remember, if this is an object that is not a human being, that doesn't have a sophisticated genetic code, she cannot balance herself horizontally. She cannot spread her feet wider than her hands. That is a very complicated performance of the genetic code that nobody told her how to do it, but she is doing it. She is touching the pressure sensors at the feet, the pressure sensors at the hand, the stretch sensors inside the muscles, the Golgi or the tendon sensors inside the ligaments, the equilibrium apparatus inside the ears, the hearing apparatus inside the ears also, the visual apparatus inside the eyes, and her brain is doing a lot of computation. Now in this picture you can tell she has developed a lot. Now she is lifting and engaging the pelvis to lift her middle center. The middle center is the center of gravity. You can tell no, the center of gravity is toward the head because the head is too heavy. Well, that is very true, but the strongest muscles are not in the head. The strongest muscles are in the pelvis and the legs. The legs are not strong enough, but they are getting there. If you look at both heels are elevated. They are not collapsing on the heels are not collapsing on the ground, which means she is engaging the stretch reflexes of the muscles of the calf muscles. The knees are not collapsing, which means she is engaging the quadriceps muscles. And the arms are beautifully stretched straight, which means she is using the triceps muscles. And the head is elevated, which means she is using the back muscles of the neck. Nobody is there to teach her how to do that. She is doing it by the genetic code. And if you look at the magic of geometry, both feet are separated far from each other, but both arms are close to each other. Well, how did she know the engineering and the geometrical balance? All these calculations have to be done by the genetic through the brain centers. Now she grown a lot. If you can see you can tell from her head she is looking up. Why she is looking up? Most probably she is in a very critical situation. She can fall any time. She can fall any time because her feet are too wide. Because the adductor muscles, the inside muscles of the thighs are not that strong. She cannot get unstuck. If you can tell now, if you look at the heels collapsed on the ground, or her feet are stuck in the ground, which means the sensors, the Golgi sensors give up, shut the muscles, the calf muscles are shut off. She cannot raise the heels from the ground because the extreme stress on the muscles cannot be endured. So the Golgi apparatus have to shut the muscles off, so she is stuck. You look at her head, she is looking up in the skies, up all the way up, in order to bring her head back, a little bit back, so she can keep the center of gravity right on the center of the feet. If she lower her head forward, she is going to collapse right away, because the head is going to be heavy at the front, and her body in the back is stuck on the heels, she is going to fall. Now she is trying to balance, stretching the back muscles of the neck in order to get over that difficult situation of losing her heels on the ground. Is she going to get out of that position and walk? No, she's too young to be able to recover from that position. The muscles, adductor muscles, give up. The extensors of the feet, or the back muscles of the lower legs, the calf muscles, they give up, and she would need help to get out of that situation. That is before she give up. If you look here carefully, you see the 2 feet the heels are elevated. The right foot is almost about, we can say, few millimeters from the ground. The left foot did not give up yet. Still the heel is elevated from the ground. If you look at her head is thrown forward because she still have a muscle stretch in her feet, because she is lifting her heels from the ground, which means she is still under control. As soon as these muscles give up, well, how does a muscle give? The muscle will give up by 2 things. The Golgi organ and the tendons between the muscles and the bone have to signal the muscle to give up if the muscle is too weak. Or the metabolism, she does not have enough energy in the muscle, what you call it the ATP, or the adenosine triphosphate, or the chemical compound that fuels the muscles. If the muscles have no enough fuel, the muscle will have to give up. But if you look at her head is forward, which means she's still balancing the center of mass, because the head is forward, the pelvis is backward, which means she is under control. She's doing a lot of resistance, and if you look at her hands on the table, means she is using the table as a support. Now here is a cry for help. Her feet fell on the ground. If you look at the heels are stuck on the ground. There is no way she can recover. The knees start to buckle. She starts bending. She is stuck. She doesn't know how to fall. So she have to look behind to call mommy, to call somebody. I need help, emergency. She needs help. She cannot get out of this situation because she is too young. The muscles are not strong enough. The tendon sensors, the Golgi sensors, have to fire to shut the muscles off to avoid tearing the muscles, and the chest is not that strong to grab more oxygen from the air, and it is now time to call for help. After all this work out, Alyssa now developed, the reflexes are good. If you look at her head now, she has a lot of confidence of keeping her head up. She still have to have a belt for a long time, but she is sitting like a bra. She is now in the driver's seat, or you can say the ejection seat. She is flying her stroller. The shoulder is still very narrow. The shoulder cannot keep her head too much. You have to be very careful on the head at that age. The neck is too small, but if you look at her socially and neurologically, a child cannot grow up without psychological balance. The child have to be happy, have to have a lot of nurturing from mother and father to grow up. If the child is not happy mentally, psychologically and mentally, the child cannot grow up. But Farida is doing perfectly good. Well, now she is sitting alone, which means the muscles of the back are okay. Of course, the toes of her feet are playing, they're itching, because she is growing. When anything grows, it is like a state of inflammation, a growth. The organ is growing, so her fingers, the toes of her fingers are playing, and they wanted to move. The reason she is touching her head, remember, in children, touching her head, she is pointing to the center of activity. The head has a lot of work to do. She is doing a lot of processing of information. You are going to see this sign a lot, scratching the top of her head. She's like telling herself, let me scratch my head, let me think better, let me focus. You are going to see this a lot. How is she learning it? Nobody can answer that question. Now she is in a stage of resistance training. She is holding a big potato, and she is leaning backward. You can tell, is she going to fall in her, because her head is too heavy. But she now doing some resistance training, holding objects. She is even holding the object with one hand, which means her shoulder is getting stronger. If you look at the magic of how the ears are horizontal, the eyes are horizontal, which means the reflexes are working. The equilibrium reflex is working. The visual balance of the two eyeballs with the equilibrium are working. The neck is vertical, which means the sensors of the neck, the pressure sensors, the proprioceptors are working. She is keeping her feet on the ground, which means the pelvis flexors are working, or the muscles that hold the spinal, the vertebral column to the pelvis are working. So she is growing now, growing strength, growing neurological balance, and developing socially. She is happy, she is interacting with somebody. Of course, at young age, you have to have some support, but you can tell she is happy, she is smiling. She can fall back because the center of mass is not in the center, the head is too heavy. But if you look very carefully at her feet are rotating all the time. She is itching. She wanted to stand, she have to walk. Without this motion of the feet, she is not going to grow up quickly. Every human being have to learn that habit. Whenever you move anything, you move your feet, they grow, the muscles grow, the reflexes grow. Remember, the feet has a lot of sensors. The feet has a lot of sensors. The proprioceptors, the Bassinian corpuscles, the touch receptors, the Merkel corpuscles, the Meissner corpuscles, the pain nerve endings, the touch sensors. So the more you move the feet, the more you move any part of the body, the more circulation you get, the better development of the neurological system, the more communication, the better the communication between the brain and the peripheral organs, the hands and the feet. That constant motion of her hands and the feet, and her entire body is trying to move. That is the secret for growth and development. And her eyes and her facial expressions tells you that you have a happy child, the child who's interested in growing and developing. Now she's going to do a magic trick here. She's trying to stand, she fell. Now she is scratching her head. She is thinking. Remember, she is thinking. She is telling her head, I can do better than that. She's scratching her head. Now she is dancing. Now she is screaming and screaming, jumping, screaming. She is getting her lower back exercise. She's thinking what to do now, what to do. She's going to massage her left leg and stretch it. Stretch, baby, stretch. The other leg, right leg, yes, stretch. Kiss it now, kiss it. Because she likes that leg. Now, that is the way a child grows. Nobody is telling her what to do. She have to put everything together, to go back and forth. If you look at her, the magic of genetics, she is doing everything by instincts. She's trying to stand, she collapsed. Scratch her head, think. I can do better than that. Let me scratch my head. Let me scratch. Yeah. Dance, scream, jump. That is the circulation. That is the neurological development. The child have to exercise. All humans have to do that. Get your left stretch it, move it, stretch it, yes, enhance the circulation, get the other, yes, yeah, very good, bravo, kiss it now, kiss it. She did a good job. All humans have the gift of instincts. All humans can do that. It is not just a child, remember. It is not a child. All humans can exercise. Now, we advanced a little. She can stand with help. How did she get there? I don't know yet. If you look at her knees are unstable. She's exercising the feet now. She's stretching the calf muscle, lifting the heels from the ground. Try to train the stretch reflex of the muscles. Try to train the Golgi apparatus of the tendons. She is training the pressure points of the feet. The light touch, the heavy touch, the pain sensors, and the balance. If you look at her head is bouncing, training the vestibules of the ears, the equilibrium apparatus of the ears. Training her ears, her eyes, how to keep the horizontal level of the two ears, how to keep her head vertical up, how to not collapse, using the table to support herself. She doesn't have a lot of energy, she doesn't have very strong muscles, and she will have to have help to get out of that situation. The reason she is shaking, because you have to have reflexes, nervous reflexes. You have to have strong muscles and bones in order to be able. Now she is crying because she is going to fall. She is going to fall. Daddy came, helped her, because she got help. She is not happy because it is very painful to grow up. She wanted to stand like everybody else, but she is growing up. She will have to endure that pain and suffering. Well, here Farida was able to use the TV on the top as a target to stand. She got stuck. The two heels collapsed on the ground. Why? Because the calf muscles cannot lift the heels. She is trying to get the heels up. If she can get the heels up, she can drag one foot to the next to the other. The problem, the adductor muscles of the thighs or the inner muscles of the thighs are at extreme stretch, which means they have to give up, otherwise they are going to be torn. Daddy came to help her. She was in the middle of doing something, but she reached the end. This is the most she can do. She cannot recover from that position because of the muscles at the end. Is she going to tear the muscles? No, because there is a sensor, the Golgi sensors between the muscle and the tendon will shut the muscle off and she will have to fall. That is a safety mechanism. But as long as she's going to try over and over, stand and fall, the muscles will become stronger, the stretch reflexes will adapt their threshold of firing, the Golgi apparatus will adapt, so she was not going to collapse as quickly as she is when she is young. When she is going to have nutrition and feeding to develop the bone and the muscles and the nervous system. While growing, you have to acquire knowledge. You have to acquire all kind of knowledge in the environment, in the dimension, in the nature of things. She is puzzled with the mirror. She sees somebody inside the mirror. She is going to try to find out who is in the mirror. So she is putting her hand behind the mirror to find the person inside the mirror. The place behind the mirror is too tight. Her hands cannot go inside. She gave up now. She's trying to find out something else. If she play with that thing, can she find out who is in that mirror? Now, while she is playing, you can tell her head is very well controlled. Look at that. She is falling now on the ground, but she can stand on her knees without falling backward. Why? Because she developed strong muscles in the neck. Not very strong, but strong enough. Her shoulders are very weak. Her legs, she cannot hold her up. That's all she can do now, is to enjoy growing up. That will take a lot of time. While she is doing that, she has to explore why nature is so complicated. She got to find the person behind the mirror. For now, it is good distraction, because growing up will take time. Building the bricks of muscles, bones, and nerves, that is too many years of growth. She cannot do gymnastics now. She might do gymnastics very soon, but for now, she needed to grow to get the components of the muscles, the nerves, and the sensors, and the psychological maturity, and grasp the nature of the surroundings. With some help, yes, she got the heels up. Yeah, perfect. So that means the stretch reflexors of the muscles of the legs are firing good now. She was able to recruit small muscle fibers. Look at the heels are perfectly elevated. She can control the heels. She is stepping. She is leaning forward because the vertebral column is still weak. So she's using some support. While she's doing that, she is stepping sideways. One heel up, one heel down, one heel up, one heel down. She can collapse and fall now. But the good sign is that the heels are elevated, and she was able now to stand on one foot by leaning forward. Of course, the hands will take too long. If you look at the way her father is using the hands, and she is using the hands, it's different. She cannot use one finger at a time, and the fingers are just at random. She can stretch her hands, but she cannot do fine movement with the fingers. She stood, and she can lift the heels up. So far, the feet are close to each other, which means she is under control. Remember the relationship between the brain and the periphery. The feet are too far from the brain, so the feet will require a lot of time to grow the neural tracts from the brain to the neck, to the vertebral column, to the thighs, to the legs, lower legs, to the feet. So the feet will develop over longer time. The hands will develop also will take longer time, because the hands differ from the feet. The hands have very complicated functions. The thumb of the human and the fingers and the tendons, they have too many mobile parts and too many functions. Even though the feet is very sluggish organ compared to the hands of the humans, the feet require very long neural tract from the brain to the feet to develop. She is now working on that balance. So the more she bounces right and left, front and back, the stronger the muscles will get, the better the stretch sensors of the muscle, the better the pressure sensors, and the fingers of the hands will take too long. By the time a person learns how to play a musical instrument, will take years and years to do that by the fingers. If the instrument is a drum that does not need a lot of finger movement, just the hands and the arms, a person can master that skill at younger age.